Some wounds don't bleed, they bill you, quietly, month after month. Just this once turning into your whole life until you realize you're not a son anymore. You're a payment plan, and the gut punch isn't the money. It's hearing your love called selfish. This story isn't for us to cheer when someone falls, and it's not for us to judge a family that lost its way. We just need to walk into it with a little stillness. And notice how easily kindness gets mistaken for obligation, how fast guilt becomes a leash. Because after Thanksgiving, his dad screamed, "All you do is take, you've never given this family anything," and instead of begging to be seen, he did something colder, cleaner. He canceled every payment, vanished for 3 weeks, and came back only when the house hit the auction block. Not to win an argument, just to stop saving people who never planned to stop taking. Now, let me tell you what happened. My name is Axton Wilder. I'm not proud of how far it went, but I'm done pretending it happened for no reason. Before I tell you the whole story, I just need to know you're here with me. Comment hi or tell me where you're watching from. Sometimes knowing someone is listening is the only thing that makes saying it out loud possible. And if you've ever been the one who carried everyone until your hands went numb, consider subscribing. Not for drama, for company. For the kind of stories people don't usually admit they lived through. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. I was still standing in the kitchen long after everyone had gone. The air was thick with the leftovers of a night that looked perfect, from the outside, faint scent of roasted turkey. A bit of Pinot Noir dried into the rim of a forgotten wineglass silverware, clinking faintly as the catering staff cleaned up in the background. I hadn't moved in what felt like forever. My hand clutched my phone so tightly my knuckles had gone white. I hadn't cried. I hadn't said a word. I just stood there surrounded by the soft gleam of the countertops I chose, the lights I installed, the layout I designed. This was the home I built. And somehow standing in it tonight, I felt like the guest who overstayed. A few hours earlier, I had told myself one more try, one more year. Maybe this Thanksgiving would be different. I'd booked the same catering team I use for client events, arranged flowers to match the fall palette, placed the candles in exact positions to draw the eye toward the centerpiece. I double-checked the seating, the lighting warmth, the arrival timing. Everything choreographed like a launch. Hope for me always came dressed as precision. The first person through the door was my mother, Janice. She didn't even say hello before she squinted at the drapes and said, "You still haven't changed those." Then came my father, Harlan, still on a call, walking straight past me like I was just another piece of furniture. No nod, no. "How have you been?" Just presence heavy and silent. Blair showed up fashionably late in an overpriced coat with the kind of perfume that fills a hallway before she even steps inside. Her husband Trent trailed behind all easy charm and artificial humility. He clapped me on the back like we were college buddies and immediately asked if I had an extra room they could crash in for the weekend. While I was answering the door, juggling catering notes and trying to keep the pumpkin ravioli warm, the four of them settled into the living room like they'd walked into a vacation rental they didn't plan to pay for. They sipped the wine I selected, scoffed at the artwork I'd hung, questioned the lighting like I hadn't spent 2 full weekends adjusting its angles. Not one of them offered help. Not one asked if I needed anything. Dinner was served at 6:15. Everyone took their seats like they had better places to be. I was plating hors d'oeuvres while my father gave the toast. To family, he said, lifting his glass. To the ones who are always there when it matters most. His eyes skimmed past me like I wasn't even in the room. Like I was the waiter. My mother complained the turkey was too dry. Blair laughed at the idea of designer spaces for small-town brands. Trent launched into a story about a friend who made 6 figures flipping crypto and capped it off by asking if I'd co-sign a loan. I kept my face neutral. I'm used to this now. If I react, I'm too sensitive. If I don't, I'm distant. The truth, I've been funding this family for years. Rent payments, school funds, surprise emergencies. No one ever called it what it was. To them, it was just what Axton does. I bought a cabin outside Hood River for us to spend time together, never even got to stay a full weekend. They treat it like a free Airbnb. The studio project I'm leading now is the only reason the money hasn't run dry. It's not just my job, it's the dam holding their chaos back. By the time they left, I was back in the kitchen cleaning up after the last cocktail napkin. No thank yous. No, that was nice. Just the silence they always leave behind. I placed the last wine glass in the dishwasher and checked my phone. There was a voicemail from my father. I didn't listen to it right away. I just stared at the notification, gut clenched. Something was waiting in that message. Something that was about to unmake whatever part of me still wanted to believe we were a real family. I listened to the voicemail at 1:08 a.m., standing barefoot in the dark. My back against the fridge, the tile floor cold beneath me. I hit play and heard his voice sharp, controlled, the kind of tone Harlan used when delivering bad news to clients or issuing final warnings. "All you do is take," he said. "You've never given this family anything." I played it twice. Not because I wanted to hurt more, but because I needed to be sure I wasn't imagining it. Not just the words, but the conviction behind them. He believed it. Or worse, he wanted everyone else to. I wish I could say I was shocked. But it wasn't shock. It was more like clarity. Cold, aching clarity. That this wasn't an accident. That for years they'd been building a story where I was the spoiled one, the taker, the outlier. I remembered the first time I sent money home, spring of 2020. The house in Cary was 2 months behind on payments. My dad called, voice tight, said, "We'll make it up to you." That was the start. Then came Blair's separation, the custody case, the just this once help with her attorney fees. Trent got laid off, then rehired, then laid off again, and suddenly I was covering rent, utilities, a new mattress. What began as help turned into routine. Routine turned into obligation. Obligation turned into silence. I didn't even question it anymore. That night at Thanksgiving, it all snapped into focus. The way my mom criticized the meal like she hadn't eaten for free. The way Blair smiled when she mentioned how hard it is being a single mom while holding out her wine glass. The way my dad toasted a family I clearly wasn't part of. Every action felt planned, strategic. At 2:13 a.m., still wide awake, I opened my laptop. There, buried under a dozen unread emails, was one from 3 weeks ago, mortgage overdue notice. The Cary house, delinquent. Not by a few days, weeks. I scrolled further. There was another one, and another. They knew. And they'd come to my house that night, not just for dinner, but for the last ask before it all crumbled. I closed the laptop, then opened my phone again. I checked my banking app. The screen lit up with transfers, all of them automated monthly payments to my parents, Blair, even one marked for insurance reimbursement I couldn't even remember agreeing to. I stared at the list like it was a hall of ghosts. Every transaction, a tiny betrayal. Then I remembered something. Last spring I borrowed Blair's tablet for a quick Zoom call while mine was updating. I'd seen a message pop up from Trent, something about, "Don't worry, Axton will cover it, he always does." I brushed it off then. But now it made my skin crawl. They weren't just relying on me. They'd built a whole plan around me. I was a mechanism, a human trust fund, a scapegoat they could use when the world asked where the money went. "Axton's fine," they'd say. "He's got it." And if I ever pulled away, then I'd be the villain, the one who abandoned the family, the one who only takes. I sat on the edge of the bed, blinking at my screen, that sentence from my father echoing like a knife being pulled from a drawer. "You've never given this family anything. No more questions. No more giving." I opened the settings on each transaction, paused, hovered over cancel. Then I thought of the look on Blair's face when she'd poured her second glass of wine, all charm and calculation. The way Trent joked about jobs he never kept. The way my mom ran her hand over the table setting I curated with months of effort and said, "Maybe too modern." And I heard it again. That voice, that sentence. I hit cancel, one by one. And when the screen went blank, I knew something else had cleared out with it. There would be no more dinners, no more favors, no more asking. Only silence. And the truth. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I sat in the kitchen with every light off except the one above the sink, a half-finished glass of water beside me, and a spreadsheet open on my laptop. I wasn't thinking about who hurt me or whether they meant it. I was thinking in numbers. Cold, sharp, undeniable numbers. I pulled every bank statement from the last 3 years. I traced every transaction labeled family. Recurring payments to my parents for mortgage support backdated as far as March 2020. Transfers to Blair, some marked as legal assistance, others as vague as kids' needs. Trent's Venmo requests started innocently like pizza or car repairs, then ballooned into full rent payments, medical bills, even something called interim gig offset, whatever that meant. I added it all up and stared at the total. I'd given away a down payment on another house, maybe two, my 20s, my margins, my sleep. All of it sacrificed to keep everyone else from tipping over. And somehow they'd convinced themselves I was the one who took. At 3:47 a.m., I logged into my online banking. One by one, I opened each scheduled payment and hit cancel. No anger, no outburst, just finality. Like I was signing off on a fiscal year. Dad's payment gone, Mom's gone, Blair's monthly fund gone, Trent's floating allowance gone. The moment I hit the last one, I felt something unfamiliar surface in me. Silence. Not peace, exactly. But a kind of emptiness that didn't feel like pain, just space. My phone vibrated. Then again. Then again. First came the auto alerts, payment failed. Then the messages. Axton. Something wrong with the transfer, Blair. I think there's an error, Trent's card got declined. Then my mother. We need to talk. Now. My father with the subtlety of a hammer. What the hell are you doing? None of them asked if I was okay. Not one of them asked why. They just wanted the money to keep moving. Like the machine jammed and they were calling tech support. I didn't answer. Instead, I called Miles Avery. He picked up fast, he always did. I need to lock this down, I said. All of it. I canceled everything. They're going to come hard. Miles listened. Didn't interrupt. Then he said, first document everything. Screenshots. Voicemails. Every transfer you've made, every message they send. Don't engage emotionally. That's how they bait you. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. And second, he continued, I pulled the notice on the Carey house. Auction date is firm. You've got just under 3 weeks before it goes public. If they don't come up with the money, it's going on the block. 3 weeks. Exactly. That explained everything. Their urgency at Thanksgiving. The timing of Blair's sob story. Mom's blood pressure drama, Dad's toast like a last PR move before the crash. They didn't just want dinner. They wanted one final cash injection before their secrets hit the street. And now the clock was ticking. What are you thinking? Miles asked. I'm disappearing, I said. Not forever. Just long enough. To make sure you're not here to stop it. No, I said. To make sure I'm not here to fix it. I spent the rest of the morning packing. A single bag, clothes, a notebook, my backup laptop, a burner phone. Nothing traceable. I booked a cabin in Oregon under a separate account I used for solo retreats. I called the studio and told them I was taking a scheduled creative leave, something I'd already earned but never used. No one questioned it. At 6:14 a.m., I stepped into my car, shut the door, and threw my phone into airplane mode. As the city of Raleigh faded in my rear view, I kept hearing it. That voice, that sentence. All you do is take. Someday I'd play it back to him. Not in revenge. Just to remind him what it sounds like when someone rewrites your life in a single breath. But first I was going to let him live with the silence. The cabin near Hood River was small. 2 rooms, 1 fireplace, 1 long window looking out at a stretch of pine trees and fog so thick it felt like the world ended just beyond the porch. That first night I didn't unpack. I just stood there for a while, breathing air that didn't expect anything from me. I set rules. No notifications. No email. No scrolling through missed messages. My phone stayed off except for 1 check-in with Miles every few days. I broke my day into sections, long walks, sketching ideas without deadlines, cooking meals I actually enjoyed. No noise, no guilt. It took 3 days before my hands stopped twitching every time I heard a buzz that wasn't real. By day 4, I started drawing again. Not office parks or corporate entryways. Spaces I wanted to exist, quiet zones for people who carried invisible weight, reading rooms, creative recovery pods. I sketched a retreat center for burnout survivors. Each room with no clocks, no mirrors, no cell signal, just space and silence, That's when I knew I wasn't just hiding. I was healing. But the storm came anyway. The first message slipped through when I turned on the phone briefly to check a reservation email. Need to know what's going on, Blair's credit card just bounced. Then Trent says landlord threatened to change the locks. Then your mom's BP is spiking again. It was like they were taking shifts. On day 6, my voicemail filled up. My dad's voice cut through. You're burning bridges you don't understand. When this comes back on, you don't expect a hand. Day 8. Blair left a message sobbing. I don't know what to tell the kids. You promised you'd help us stay stable. This is cruel. I nearly caved. Nearly. Until I found it. An email from 2 weeks before Thanksgiving hidden under a spam label. Notice from a foreclosure service regarding the Carey house. It had been delinquent for months, which meant when they showed up at my home for Thanksgiving, they weren't visiting, they were staging. Planning a final extraction before the ship sank. It was never about family. It was always about delay. By week 2, their messages changed tone. Are you okay? Trent asked. We're all worried. You're acting really erratic. Is this something chemical? My mom chimed in. You need help, please. We're ready to support you through anything, even if you can't see it right now. They were laying groundwork, reframing me not as the escapee but as the unstable one. Because if I was unwell, then whatever they'd done was necessary. It got worse. I answered a blocked number on day 11 thinking it was the cabin manager confirming my extension. Instead, it was a voice identifying themselves from a local welfare check service. We've had a call from concerned relatives. You've been off-grid. They just want to ensure you're safe. I kept calm, thanked them. Said I was on retreat and fully functional. They seemed satisfied. I called Miles immediately. They're escalating, I said, trying to flip the narrative. Miles didn't hesitate. Then we escalate too. I'm compiling a file, voicemail screenshots, transaction records, the foreclosure timeline. You're going to need it. Need it for what? For when they try to file something drastic. Emergency guardianship. Asset freeze. A restraining order framed as mental health intervention. I stared at the window for a long time after we hung up. Outside, the trees stood still, indifferent. But I could feel the clock inside me counting down. I made 2 decisions. 1, I would not return early. That gave them too much stage time. 2, I would return on the exact day of the Carey auction. With proof. With posture. With everything they feared I'd never grow. That night, I blocked every number. I set a timer on my calendar for the return flight. And I started organizing a folder called Receipts. Every voicemail. Every email. Every thread of the story they were so sure I'd never tell. I stood by the window the next morning, coffee in hand, and realized something simple and terrifying. They didn't fear losing me. They feared losing their version of me. And that version, he was gone. I got back to Raleigh just before midnight. No one saw me pull up. I parked 2 blocks away, walked the rest with the hood of my coat up, and let myself in through the side entrance like I was sneaking into my own life. I didn't turn on many lights, just enough to see where I was stepping. Everything was still here. My furniture, my books. The coffee cup I hadn't rinsed before I left. I walked around the apartment like I was checking for damage after a storm. But there was none, at least not here. Not in the space I built with my own hands. I watered the plants, rearranged a stack of books that had been leaning for weeks, threw out a forgotten bag of groceries, and in those small motions I reminded myself this life is mine, not a loan, not a favor, not a family heirloom. Mine. The next morning I turned my phone back on. It felt like lighting a fuse. In under a minute, the screen lit up with an avalanche of missed calls, messages, voicemails, emails, and alerts. I scrolled through in silence, thumb skimming past each notification like flipping through a stranger's diary. There were no apologies, no concern, just a mob of demands. Where are you? What the hell are you doing? We need to talk. Fix this call now. Don't be selfish. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent one message to the family group chat. Per your words, I've never given this family anything. So now I'm giving you exactly that. I hit send, no follow-up, no explanation, just enough to anchor me in reality, like nailing a stake into the ground before a storm. 10 minutes later, a text came in from my cousin Marcus. Hey, you okay? Heard some stuff. You've been acting weird. People are worried. And there it was. They'd gotten ahead of me. Painted their version of the story to the extended family before I could say a word. Whatever I said now would sound like damage control. They had the early narrative. I had the truth. But truth always takes longer to land. I went to the studio that afternoon. The second I stepped into the building, it hit me my real life had been waiting for me while I was gone. My latest pitch had been greenlit while I was away. A major firm signed off on one of my designs, said it had a clarity they hadn't seen before. My staff looked relaxed, focused. Kendra had handled things beautifully. Nothing had fallen apart. Not even close. It was the first time I saw it so clearly. The more I stopped saving them, the more I started saving myself. Kendra met me by my desk. Your mom's been calling the front desk. A lot. She left voicemails too. And Trent's downstairs. I paused. Did he come in? He's in the lobby, she said. Won't leave. Told reception it's urgent. And loud. I glanced at the clock. Security already called. I didn't want to escalate. You didn't, I said. He did. Downstairs, Trent was pacing in front of the elevators, throwing his hands in the air, talking to no one in particular, but loud enough to be heard from the hallway. She's sick, he barked. She needs her medication, and he won't even pick up the damn phone. I didn't go out there. I let security do their job. They asked him to leave. When he resisted, they reminded him it was private property. He stormed out, still yelling, still performing. He wanted me to explode, to meet him in the chaos, to give him something to twist. I didn't. That afternoon, Blair came by, with her daughter. They didn't come upstairs. She stayed in the lobby. Let the kid run wild through the waiting area, pulling down fabric samples, tapping on display screens, knocking over a chair. I stood at the top of the stairs just out of view, watching. It hurt. Of course it did. I loved that little girl, but I wasn't going to be used. I asked Kendra to inform them that the studio didn't allow unscheduled visits, especially not involving minors. If she wanted to talk, she could do it through my attorney. They left. Eventually. Then came the email. Subject line, you win. She's in the hospital. No greeting, no context. Just 3 lines. She collapsed today. The stress, the betrayal, the shame. Hope you're happy. I didn't open it. I forwarded it to Miles. If it was a real emergency, they had plenty of jewelry left to pawn, assets to liquidate, other friends to call. They didn't need me. What they needed was someone to blame. Miles and I met for coffee the next day. Neutral ground. Public. He laid out a file with color-coded tabs. We need to document everything he said. No more conversations without record, no more walk-ins, no more negotiations. From here on out, it's legal channels only. I nodded. They're spiraling. They're out of cash, he said, and out of time. But they still think they can claw something back if they make you look like the villain. That same afternoon, I got a call from Harper Lane, an old friend, sharp, honest, someone I trusted. They've been planting this for a while, she said. The whole "you're not well" thing. It didn't start this month. It's been quiet, subtle digs at parties, little hints at family dinners. People believed it because you were always the quiet one, the one who kept to yourself. She paused. They're terrified of what happens when you stop paying for their life. I didn't say anything, and that, she added, is why they have to make you look unstable. Because otherwise, you're just a guy who finally said no. By the time we hung up, I knew exactly what I had to do. No more guilt, no more scenes, no more saving face. Let them scream. Let them spin stories. I was done playing the villain in a drama I didn't audition for. The auction was approaching, and I had a front row seat reserved. I wasn't coming to rescue. I was coming to witness. The first strike came on Monday. A client texted me early in the morning. Hey, everything good? We got a weird call asking if our project was still moving forward. Said you were... dealing with something. I didn't answer right away. I forwarded the message to Miles. They're targeting your work now, he confirmed. Classic move. Undermine your credibility. Get people to question your stability. If enough clients hesitate, they think you'll cave. I wouldn't. But I felt it. That old reflex tight in the chest hands, tingling the urge to run and fix everything, prove them wrong. I breathed through it. Then came Harlan's message. Out of nowhere. Long, rambling. We've always supported your studio, you know. Made sacrifices so you could focus. This is how you thank us. It wasn't a conversation. It was a press release. A setup for screenshots. Something he could show people later and say, look. We tried. I didn't respond. Miles filed it. By midweek, things escalated. I got an alert from building security. Someone had requested a wellness check at my address, claiming I'd gone unreachable and may be at risk. I opened the door to two officers, polite but firm. We're just here to make sure you're okay, one said. Family's been worried. I kept it short, calm. Explained I was fine, working from home, not in danger, not in need of intervention. They left satisfied, but I didn't feel safe. They're laying groundwork, Miles told me. If they can get even one official report suggesting erratic behavior, they can use that to delay proceedings, challenge the auction, maybe even file for emergency control of assets. That's when the cabin came under fire. They filed a motion questioning ownership, said it was a family purchase, that I held it in trust, and that any profits or control should be collectively shared. Miles needed proof. Emails. Texts. Anything. I dug into my archive. Found a thread from Blair thanking me for finding a quiet place for yourself finally. Another from Mom saying, it's good you bought something just for you. No shared language, no joint ownership, just a pattern of me giving and them taking. We added it to the file. Then Blair showed up again. This time she didn't bring her daughter. She brought threats. You really want her growing up thinking you didn't care, she said, eyes red, voice trembling just enough to sound practiced. I didn't answer. She waited. I still didn't answer. You're going to regret this, she whispered. We're family. And then she left. That night, Miles called with a final update. They're almost out of moves, he said. No injunctions filed. No freezes granted. Unless they hit the lottery tomorrow, the house goes to auction in 5 days. I stood in the doorway of my apartment, lights off, city glowing below. I felt strangely calm. They're going to try something dramatic, I said. Something loud, public. Then don't meet them there, he replied. Let the day come. Let it all unfold. But show up. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. I opened my journal, wrote one line under the date of the auction. They don't deserve to see me when I give, so they won't get to see me when I take it back. And then I closed the book, locked the front door, and waited for the morning I'd walk into that auction, not as their son, not as their scapegoat, but as the man they never thought I'd become. I woke up early that morning before the light had fully settled over Raleigh. My apartment was still quiet in the way only a space you've claimed can be. I followed the same routine I'd been drilling into my bones for weeks. Black coffee, 10 deep breaths with my feet flat against the floor. Then I opened the file folder. Inside were the printed voicemails, copies of the payment records, a spreadsheet of every dollar transferred, every favor repaid. I double-checked that the voicemail, the one, was printed 3 times, just in case. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, leaving only one line open, Miles. Today wasn't about confrontation. It was about conclusion. By the time I pulled into the street in Cary, the signs were already up. A white sandwich board in front of the lawn announced the auction, bold letters, contact info, start time. Mr. Sutton's car wasn't there yet, but a small crowd had already gathered, neighbors, a few curious bidders, someone with a camera slung over their shoulder. I stayed in the car for a few seconds, took it all in. The house hadn't changed, beige siding, the same faded wind chime on the porch. I'd mowed that lawn every Saturday from age 11 to 17. I'd once dreamed under that roof. I'd also been shattered under it. Now it was the stage for their final act. I stepped out of the car, locking it with a soft click. The air was thick, humid, and stale like a room full of secrets. And there they were. Harlan was front and center, standing stiff like a man presiding over a courtroom. Janice hovered to his left, clutching a handkerchief. Blair stood, rigid arms folded tight across her chest. Trent lingered in the background, eyes shifting, jaw grinding like he'd rehearsed something and was waiting for his cue. I didn't break stride, but before I could even shut my door, Harlan moved in. "What do you think you're doing, son?" His voice was low but sharp, the kind of tone that dared you to answer wrong. Janice moved closer. "I haven't slept in weeks," she said. Her voice cracked on cue. "My blood pressure is sky high. You're tearing this family apart." Blair followed. "Do you even care about the kids they ask about you? You're just... gone." I didn't respond. I kept walking measured, even steps until I reached the edge of the driveway. That's when Harlan switched gears. "Axe," he said softly, using a name he hadn't used since I was 15. "You and I were better than this. You know this isn't how we solve things." I looked at him, studied the lines of his face. There was no warmth there, just strategy. He was trying to pull me aside. Negotiate. Get me away from the crowd. "No," I said calmly. "If there's anything to say, say it here." He hesitated. That was his first mistake. Mr. Sutton's SUV rolled in moments later, followed by 2 more cars. A man in business casual stepped out with a clipboard and started checking names. Bidders approached cautiously, but it was clear they knew what this was, and they knew who I was. That's when Blair struck. "You'll never see them again," she hissed. "If this goes through, you're cutting yourself off." I blinked. Once, then I met her eyes. "I'm not the one using children as ransom." She faltered. The words didn't land where she expected. Janice looked panicked. Trent glanced at the growing crowd. Then I spoke just loud enough for everyone to hear. "There's been a lot of noise about what I've done. Let me be clear." I pulled out the paper, unfolded it, held it up the way you hold a mirror to someone who refuses to look. I read, "All you do is take. You've never given this family anything." Harlan's face froze. "That was the voicemail," I said. "Left by my father. On record. After I paid for his second mortgage, his car, and their hospital bills. After I supported Blair's kids. After I kept this house above water for 5 years." I looked up at him, and for the first time he looked small. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to honor your words." Janice collapsed into sobs. Loud, theatrical. She sank to the porch steps like she was being crucified. "I carried you for 9 months," she wailed. "This is how you repay me." Trent stepped forward, voice rising. "She's sick, man. She needs medication. You're just gonna let this happen. You're fucking heartless." I didn't flinch. I turned toward Mr. Sutton. "Good morning. I'm Axton Wilder. I'm here to confirm the auction proceeds as scheduled. No delays, no negotiations." He nodded, a little unsure. "You're the current holder of the deed?" "Yes," I said. "And I have documentation to prove it." I didn't need to say anything more. I'd already said everything I would. The rest was just wind and witnesses. Harlan started to speak again, but the auctioneer raised his clipboard. "Let's begin." I stepped back, watching the scene unfold. Blair looked like she might lunge forward. Janice wailed louder. Harlan's mouth opened, then closed. Trent stared at the ground. And I realized what was being sold wasn't just a house. It was a fantasy, the fantasy that they controlled me, the illusion that guilt was currency, the myth that blood owed them everything. And today, it had a price tag. The auction ended quickly, clean, unsentimental. A family from Durham placed the final bid. Mr. Sutton handled the paperwork. I signed where I needed to, handed over the keys, and didn't look back. I didn't celebrate. I met Miles at his office 2 hours later. We reviewed the documentation, voicemails, emails, payment histories, witness statements, security footage. The file was thick, airtight. They may still contest the cabin, he warned. They might try and leak things. Call it elder abuse. Public sympathy plays. Let them, I said. I'm not reacting anymore. We locked in the next steps, no direct contact. All communication through legal. Phone numbers blocked, new mailing address sealed. For weeks, things were quiet. Not because they had changed, but because I stopped feeding the fire. The rumors about my mental state fizzled out when they couldn't find a spark. Clients kept working with me, partners doubled down. One even pulled me aside and said, "Honestly, I've never seen you this focused. Whatever's going on, keep doing it." That's when I knew reputation isn't what they say about you. It's what stays standing after they stop talking. I put my apartment in Raleigh on the market. Found a place in Taos, New Mexico, small, full of light, nestled between adobe walls and sky so wide it made you breathe different. I didn't take much with me. Just my tools, my files. A photo of me as a kid that I kept in the drawer, not for nostalgia, but to remember who I promised I'd become. Signing the deed in Taos felt like crossing a border. This wasn't just a new house. It was the first place I'd chosen with no strings attached. I set up my workspace near a wide window facing the hills. Drew the curtains back and let the sun do its work. For once I was building without fear. Then came the updates. Miles called one morning. "They've moved," he said. "Smaller place, shared lease. Trent's working full-time. Blair's doing freelance from home. No more travel. No more nannies. No more anything extra." I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just nodded. When the stream stops, people learn to swim or drown. That's not cruelty. It's reality. A week later, Harper called. "I ran into your aunt," she said. "She mentioned how things finally make sense. That maybe you weren't the villain after all. Maybe I said, but I'm not waiting for their version of the truth anymore." Blair sent an email in October. Subject, "I'm sorry." Just 3 sentences. No excuses. No follow-up. I read it. Let it sit. I didn't reply. I archived it. Not out of pettiness, but because her apology belonged to her. Not to me. Not anymore. I returned to the cabin that winter, the Hood River property that had once been their weekend escape and my invisible burden. When I look back on everything that happened, the loudest part wasn't the auction or the messages or even the way my father's words cut. The loudest part was the silence that came after I stopped paying for love and realized how much room there is inside a life when you finally stop shrinking to keep everyone else comfortable. Chungta don't always leave because we hate people. Sometimes we leave because we're trying not to disappear. And there's a strange kind of compassion in that toward yourself and even toward the ones who only knew how to hold on by taking. If this story stirred something in you, you're not alone. Chungta all carry different versions of the same question: where does love end and where do boundaries begin? If you want, leave a few words in the comments, just a hi or where you're listening from, or the one line you wish someone had told you sooner. I read them and I think a lot of us do too, quietly when we need it most. And if you'd like to be part of a space where stories like this get told without judgment, where we listen, we breathe, and we heal a little at a time, subscribe and stay with us. Not as a click, as a seat at the table. Thanks for being here with me. I'll see you in the next story.